Now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to this hour of the show. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and psychic readings. So if there's stuff going on in your life, give me a call, drop me an email. We can set up a time for a private consultation. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page guide. That's appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. In this hour, we're going to be speaking with Josh LaJuanie, and I have to tell you, before I do his intro, he's a hoot, and I think you are all going to love him as much as I love him. But let me tell you a little bit about him. Josh LaJuanie accomplished what some people would deem impossible, dropping over 200 pounds and a lifelong addiction to unhealthy foods and lifestyle habits to discover a passion for running. A journey that led him to competing multiple marathons and more recently his first ultramarathon. He didn't just lose weight, and he didn't just keep the weight off. He became an athlete, a real athlete. So please welcome to the show, Josh LaJuanie. Hey, Josh, how's it going?
It's great. Nice to be on.
I am just so excited to have you on because you're just so fun and so real, and I think people can hear you for that. But let's start here. Josh, you lost 200 pounds. Who were you before this transition? Who was Josh?
Josh was just an overweight ex-football player, self-proclaimed has-been, who was, cracking jokes and drinking beer and somewhat the life of the party and the coordinator of all the fried victuals at said party. That would be, I guess, the old me in a nutshell.
Fried victuals.
Fried victuals, yeah, food, just anything. You know that old Beverly Hillbillies term.
Well, that's what I was thinking, and I'm like, oh, that's right. But you're from Louisiana, so I guess people should know you speak Louisiana.
I speak whatever comes to my mind.
But what happened? What sparked this change in you? I mean, losing 200 pounds is miraculous by itself, but now you're running marathons and ultra marathons, which personally I can't imagine. But what was that light bulb moment for you?
It was a series of light bulb moments, really. There was no single light bulb moment, but if you wanted to single one thing out, we could back it up to say maybe the very first light bulb moment I had, and that was. It's going to sound trivial, but it was honestly the Saints winning the Super Bowl for me in 2010. It sounds crazy, but it's really the truth. It shook my idea of what impossible, quote unquote, was or is. And that coupled with, at that time in my life, I was a junior earning my degree at Nicholls State as a non-traditional student who had flunked out in a failed football career attempt in his normal college years. I was back in school and doing the impossible. I was getting my degree that I thought I would never actually achieve and do. And during that February 2010, I was, I'm a Saints season ticket holder, and that whole 2009 season was just a dream come true. And in 2010, we actually won the Super Bowl, and here I am. I read I read Coach Sean Payton's book that following summer of 2010 after the Super Bowl victory, and that in and of itself is something that was new for what was a new Josh that was growing, someone who would actually pick up a book and read information, right? That's something that was a new.
So that was like step two. You did
Yeah,
something different.
right. So learning how to learn in school was probably step one, and then the Saints winning the Super Bowl really shed a light and like shook what I thought possible and impossible was. And then I started reading with this newfound desire for facts, and wow, I learned that facts were in books. They had things you could really learn from, you could really learn from books. So I started learning. I started, seeking knowledge even outside of my, um, assigned texts outside of school. And I read tons of things in those days. I read, not to get off subject, but I read a lot about T. Boone Pickens and Warren Buffett because I was a business major, right? And I read all of these books, and just this summer, because after the Super Bowl victory, I read Sean Payton's book, and he talked a lot about how when he came down here, there was a lot of complacency because we should just sort of hang our hats on the fact that we've survived Katrina. There's no need to try to excel and reach for something great. Just the fact that we're still here and together is a win. And in a lot of ways, that was a microcosm of my very own life. The fact that I was, here I was, the fact that my big goofy butt was back in school earning a degree, just that in and of itself was something to rest my laurels on, so to speak. But coach's book actually spurred me to want to reach for something more, and at that same time I was actually being nervous. I was getting nervous about my impending senior year, which would have been 2011, because here I am. Not only am I 10 years older than everyone in all of my classes, but I'm also, at least 150 pounds heavier than everyone in all of my classes, and squeezing my big ass in all of these little desks in all of the classrooms. It's not really 400-pound man friendly, those classrooms and auditoriums and stuff. And so I was seeing the guys who were a few semesters ahead of me come to school in suits and ties. And I started to get nervous. I was like, that's going to be me in 2 semesters. And I am not comfortable with wearing that in front of people. And I really was nervous about it and just sort of was dwelling on it internally without actually doing anything about it. And in 2011, as the spring semester, my senior year started up, very good friend of mine that I've known since kindergarten, just essentially, he called me out the blue and was like, "Hey, buddy, I am joining the gym. You want to join with me and help keep me on track?" And I said, "Yep, I'll go by after class and sign up." And that was it. That is where my whole story really kicked off. I know that was not really one thing that I said, but that joining that gym with my friend, it gave me some accountability. I had a partnership with a buddy who I respected, and he respected me, and yet at the same time, that respect made us hold each other accountable and call each other out when we were being wusses. And
But I think it's interesting that it wasn't like you said, "Oh, I need to go on a diet."
no,
It took a while for this like process to unravel within the core of you, is what it's
yes,
sounding like,
right.
to make this decision that I want to change me. Question, based on your story, was your goal in going to the gym to lose weight and get thin and run marathons, or was it just part of this evolution and you just didn't know where it was going to take you anyway?
Yeah, the latter. I did. It was just I didn't. My main goal, my main reason for going back to that gym with my buddy Jeff that day, because this is a gym that I had been going to on and off all my life. So I was say going back to it. So my main goal was to be more comfortable in a suit because I knew that was coming, right? And I knew that if I tucked my shirt into a suit, first of all, it was hard to buy suits because I wore a 62 long jacket, uh, and my pant size was about a 54. Um, and so a suit was going to be expensive and hard to come by and all that stuff. And beside that, you know, I was going to look like a big dada, sweating and with the the top collar button holding on for dear life with the collar, the little button extender on the thing. And I knew what I was going to look like, and I knew I was going to be sweating on my brow, and I was just nervous about that, and I didn't want. And so that's my main goal was, let's get some weight off of you before the fall semester, which is when my capstone course was coming, right? And I knew that I would have multiple presentations in that last semester, and that's what I did. So that's why we started the gym. That's why I started, was to lose some weight, to look better in a suit. That was reason number one.
What would you say with your relationship with food? You started going to the gym, and then there's the whole food issue.
Yeah.
What would you say was the biggest issue that you had in dealing with food? I mean, it sounded like you were really into your fried food and your
Right.
beer,
Mm-hmm.
which, I find really interesting. I mean, I'm obviously not from Texas, which is where I live. And when you eat Cajun food, which I love Cajun food, but a lot of it is fried, which kind of blew me away.
And even if it's not fried, it started with a roux, which is just oil and flour.
But it tastes really good.
And it tastes amazing. And, and that's the thing, like, there's no better smell than a roux getting to the perfect color, and then you throw in the Trinity, which is bell pepper, celery, and onions. When you throw all of that stuff into a hot roux, the way that makes a room smell is insane. And that is very addictive. That is very addictive, but not only is it addictive, it's part of a culture. It's part of an identity. It's part of being a Cajun. And that is part of the problem, because we have put way too much value on what is essentially just a thing to eat. And it kills us. It honestly, just to put it frank in short, it's.
But what do you mean we put too much value on it?
Because it's not just about it tasting good. It is an actual identity. It is who you are. It is part of being from. I'm from a small community actually called Chagbay. So it is actually part of being a swamp dwelling Cajun. So it's not about you eschewing the taste and getting healthy. That would be one thing. That would be giving up fast food, right? So people could get their mind around stop eating KFC. But when you're talking about roux and stews or po' boys, or etouffee or whatever the dish may be, it's not just about that it tastes delicious. It's the fact that it's like a family member to me. I grew up with this thing. My grandmother made it. My mom made it. And if I go over to visit and I don't want to eat it, it's not just he's on a diet thing. It actually hurts feelings of family members. And the irony is that very food causes our family members to leave this earth early, often. And that's a tragic irony that we deal with right now here. It's just what it is, But I didn't really start addressing my food when I started doing the physical part at the gym that we were talking about. I never did that. One of the big assets in being so overweight was because I do think of it as actually a good thing that happened to me. That's might be mind-boggling to some, but I do. Uh, so one of the good things that came from being overweight in my beginning was I was realizing results without a whole bunch of food effort involved in the beginning, right? Because as a 400-pound person, just walking around throughout the day,
Cut out one piece of bread,
you're
poof,
gonna, oh
50
my
pounds.
goodness, you're gonna burn a bunch of calories. And if you're replacing one meal with a salad, even if the salad has chicken and ranch dressing and cheese on it, right? You're gonna drop weight. And so that happened. That's essentially all I did in the beginning to get my body to lose poundage for my capstone course presentations and ultimately my graduation.
So in that period of time, because you said it was about a year,
Right. It was so from February to December, right?
how much did you lose?
I
Just
lost
by making that little bit of change.
60 pounds.
That's pretty good.
60 pounds. And it was not made, I didn't do major food stuff in that period. I did things that were traditionally healthy, quote unquote healthy food. So it was a lot of chicken breast, a lot of cheese as snacks, lots of salads with dressing and bacon bits and all of that stuff on it. And like I said, I lost weight in spite of what I was eating. I didn't realize that it was in spite of what I was eating at the time. But eventually, that weight loss began to get slower and slower as my default calorie burn due to my overall body weight became less and less. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I had to readdress, and there here again comes into play my education, because here I was. Now I'm a senior. I'm a graduate. Actually, and so a lot of the time in my school, a lot of the time in my degree, I spent doing case studies and analysis on different business practices and what they did to fix said problem and what are the new outcomes with the new fixes and all of these things. And we did tons of case studies and stuff. So what I was doing was essentially just taking my weight loss as a case study, and I was trying to be as pragmatic about it as possible. And so I said, okay, I first addressed what I was doing physically that could be done better. So I knew that my weight loss was starting to slow down, and I was like, well, maybe this 3 sets of 10 old football, weightlifting, get big and strong, heavy bicep curls, bench press stuff isn't what I need to be doing. Not the way that I'm doing it. Maybe I need to do something different. So I implemented through research and discovery. I said, okay, I need to bring my calorie burn up. I need to bring my heart rate up. I need to do more intense stuff in the gym. So I started doing circuit training. And then part of my circuit training was hop on a treadmill for literally 30 seconds and get back off and go back to your weightlifting circuit. And that's where it really all began. And that morphed into me doing more research and discovery and figuring that to get into a fat burn mode, it's advantageous to go more aerobic, but for a long duration, like good long runs. And
Well,
that's where it started. Mm-hmm.
doing aerobic stuff to me is way more fun than doing like circuit training. Or I went to this gym the other day and they were doing like core stuff. I don't know. It looked, like squat thrusts and lunges. And I'm like, oh man, that looks
Do all
beyond
that.
boring. And there was no music.
Oh goodness, I can't do it without music. Now you're tripping.
So what was the biggest obstacle? Did you have issues, getting rid of some of the foods that you were eating? I mean, I know a lot of people, they are so mega challenged with like sugar or bread. Bread is a huge one for a lot of people.
Yeah, and
Um,
bread, you know, depending on what kind, but bread's not the enemy that everybody makes it out to be these days. What the early thing, but yeah, at that point in my time in my life where I was still learning, yeah, bread was an enemy, and that was a hard one for me. Po' boys was my favorite
okay,
thing
so for people
to
that
have.
don't live in the South,
Right.
what's a po' boy?
A po' boy is just a sandwich, but a giant sandwich essentially on a French loaf. Um, so French loaf is real crusty, chewy bread, and there's fried something on it, whether it's fried shrimp, oysters, crawfish, whatever, or roast beef, not fried roast beef, but roast beef and gravy, or ham and cheese, whatever sandwich you want to make on a French loaf with shredded lettuce, tomatoes, and we say mayonnaise. A lot of people say don't say mayonnaise, and my wife thinks that it is it's like chalk. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard when I say mayonnaise. But I grew up saying mayonnaise, but mayo or mayonnaise. That's a po' boy. So you have whatever fried uh, or gravied meat, and then shredded lettuce, tomatoes, mayo, and the ever important Leidenheimer loaf. To me, that's a po' boy in a nutshell. And that one was a big one for me. And also, although I wasn't giving this up early on, I was actually thinking that I needed the protein, so it was actually a health food to me. Was steaks, ribeyes especially, right? That was something I grew up with, and I'm really good at preparing them properly, and again, as part of that food being an identity and not just a place to uh, get nourishment.
Um, But what about the cravings? That's the biggest part that I hear
Hmm.
people complaining out. Like, like they're addicted to the food. Like they gotta have it. They gotta have their ice cream. They gotta have.
Right. Well, I mean, and I know I get it. And I don't really know what to say about that. I get that question all the time. Like, what about the cravings? And the only thing that I can say about the cravings is, yeah, they exist. And so what? I mean, it would feel better to not get up and go to work. What if you crave not doing that? Or what if you crave not stopping at red lights? I just crave keep going at a red light. I just crave it. And so what people don't understand is they think that their craving is they give it too much power a lot of times. And I think one of the things that helped me was discovering this physical activity that I wanted to be better at. And I knew that these foods that I craved from time to time, although I still caved and gave in a lot in the earlier days, so it wasn't like a black and white thing where it was like one day I was doing it and one day I wasn't. Um, but I knew over time that these foods were holding me back from being the runner that I wanted to be. Getting back to what we were talking about with long duration aerobic activity, I had adopted running, right? And so I wanted to, because another part of me adopting running is my wife and I love the city of New Orleans, and so we go to the city every weekend, and there's always people running around the city, and there's a big race in the city called the Crescent City Classic, and so I identified with that, so I started craving that. I want to be like one of those fit people listening to their earbuds, running down St. Charles Avenue, getting a good workout in, out in the elements, enjoying the city on foot. I just that appealed to me, and so over time, I would say over a year or so after I tasted my first Crescent City Classic race and went and had a big hamburger after and all of these things. I realized that if I want to be the runner that I think I want to be, then I need to be willing. Again, here comes the education again into my life. I need to be willing to make some changes. So I can't keep doing these things over and over and over, even though they taste real good and feel real good, and I've done them all my life. I need to be willing to make some changes. And so slowly I did that. I was giving up things because that first race effort in the Crescent City Classic really kicked my butt. And so I didn't want to have that same experience. So for that next year, I really spent a lot of time honing my diet and being more accountable. But all that meant was more protein and less carbohydrates. That was that entire portion of my life. And I
Well,
did
but
lose a lot of weight doing
there is
that, right?
so much out there that that's what they tell you to do.
Well, sure, I know. That's one of the big frustrating things for me is people don't realize, because I'm a plant-based runner guy now, they don't realize how long I spent doing chicken breast and beef jerky, because that's health food. They don't realize how long I spent doing that.
Beef
And
jerky, health food.
yeah, it's zero carbs, right?
True that.
So
Lots of salt, but zero
yeah,
carbs.
but that would be my go-to snack when I was out and about, would be a Coke Zero and a pack of beef jerky. I would do that 3, 4 times a day, you know? And that was health food, and I was losing weight, so who could argue with me, you know? And I had people telling me that it wasn't the right thing to do, but I would just completely dismiss them because, hey, have you lost 80 pounds? Or, you know what I mean? That would be my answer. And because that's where I would be at that point, you know? And so that's all I was doing, and I didn't realize it at the time. But actually, by adopting and only eating my meat that I wanted to, and I was eating pretty much only meat for a very long time. Um, by adopting that, I was giving up a lot of processed junk food. Um, so
So that's good by itself. And
right, but that happened kind of by accident, but it's because I was trying to do like this paleo thing, and or at least what my version, what I thought it meant. I thought it meant meat all the time, and that's all I would do is I just ate meat all
oh,
the time.
it's the caveman diet, right?
Right, and I identify with that because I'm a big, strong fella, and I'm a man, pound my chest guy, right? And I hunted, and I fished, and so I eat meat. I'm a carnivore. When I was in school, I even did a whole business plan. One of my presentations actually was on a concept called big ass wings. Okay. And where I was going to take turkey wings, because I have this big smoker pit. I still have the pit, and treat turkey wings in the same way that you would do a pork rib, and then serve them as an alternative to the more unhealthy pork rib. And so it was just these smoked, and they were good because I used to make them all the time. And I had little charts about how much less fat is in a turkey wing than in a pork rib, and all of these things. And it's hilarious, the shift that I've made. But yeah, I mean,
Because you
it's
don't eat meat anymore at all.
yeah, no, zero,
I
zero.
mean, so
Not
that's like turning it 100% the other way, where you
yes,
were
man.
full bore carnivore, and
And because
now
I wasn't getting the running results that I wanted, though. So I was just really being a pragmatist. I was being honest with myself about the results I was getting. Yes, I was losing weight, but not to be too graphic, but there were GI problems when you don't get any fiber in your diet at all. Um, and so I was taking Metamucil and all of these other things, and I was like, this doesn't seem natural to have to be taking this powdery substance. And not only was I taking that and eating all of this meat, but I was also supplementing my protein with whey protein. So I was eating only meat, taking whey protein supplements from GNC, and you know, having to take Metamucil so I could hopefully go to the bathroom regularly. And I really felt drugged down, because what would happen is when you starve of carbohydrates for so long, you eventually gorge on them. And I would do that regularly, especially on the weekends when we would be in New Orleans. I would eat turkey breast only all week long. And then we'd get to New Orleans and it would be, you know, Chinese food and po' boys and jambalaya all weekend, and beer all weekend. And so the results really got very slow, or very almost non-existent, after about 100 pounds of weight loss, and which was around the second uh, Crescent City Classic effort. So 2012 was the first one. So spring of 2013, I was down 100 pounds, and I was doing my second Crescent City Classic, and I was in the middle of reading Born to Run at that time. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but it's pretty amazing. And so I read Born to Run as a devout meat eater, right? I read Born to Run, learned about Scott Jurek, learned about the Tarahumara Indians and their running prowess and all of those different cool things in that book that I learned. And around that time, because the Crescent City Classic is on Easter Sunday, or the Saturday before Easter Sunday, so we do Lent here, very Catholic heavy culture. So for Lent, after the 2013 Crescent City Classic, which my wife and I had run together and had worked out pretty much all year, not together, but parallel. She was doing her thing and I was doing my thing, and we were both had this parallel goal of getting the Crescent City Classic 2013 done in under an hour, which we did, 59:56, and then very close, right?
4 seconds to spare.
Yes, and you can look it up. It's 59:56. So, but I did it, and so we decided that we were going to do this concept on eating that she had read about, called clean eating, quote unquote. Okay, and so that just meant no more processed stuff, and that was a big one. Uh, and if you do eat meat, it's going to be only grass-fed, organic stuff, and all of our fruits and vegetables had to be organic. And so we did that for the whole 40 days of Lent. And during that 40 days of Lent is when I read more about Scott Jurek, because I had learned of Scott Jurek. I don't know if you know who Scott Jurek is, but I learned about him um, in the book Born to Run, right? And so Scott Jurek, also as an aside, he just broke the record on the Appalachian Trail. So he ran from, like, I think it's North Carolina or Georgia all the way to Maine on the Appalachian Trail through the Appalachian Mountains. And he broke the record by some, like, I forget how many hours, but it's an insane feat, over 3,500 maybe kilometers. He did that in, like, I think it was 48 days or something like that. He did it. It was insane. Anyhow, I read his book, and while we were doing the clean eating, and I don't remember the exact sequence, but around that same time, I also saw Forks Over Knives. I read Rich Roll's book. I saw Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. I saw all of these other documentaries on Netflix while we were doing this clean eating. And then I was like, you know what? The clean eating thing is right. However, I don't think there's room for the quantity of meat animal products, period, that we have in our clean eating diet. And so I approached my wife and I told my wife that I was going to try this meatless, no animal products for 30 days or so. And after we were done with our clean eating. And that's essentially how I got started doing that. But it was all because what? Because I was trying to be something, not trying to not be something. I was trying to be a runner. I was not trying to not be big and fat anymore. I was trying to chase something down. And that I think helped my mindset a lot. I didn't even realize that was going on. I'm just talking about this in
Well,
retrospect now.
and it sounds like it was just this process that
Yeah.
evolved, and it wasn't uh, something that you decided. There are so many people that I've worked with or interacted with that say, "Oh, well, I decided I'm, going to become a vegetarian or I'm going to do this." And they go from eating, total crap
Uh-huh.
to wanting to like all organic and meat free and blah 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 blah, and it's too big.
Yeah.
They can't
Hmm.
comply with it. But it sounds like with you, it's like you took this step and it worked. So you
Hmm.
took the next step. Hey,
Yeah.
and it worked. And then you got this new piece of information. It's like, well, I'll give it a
Mhm.
try. And you integrated it piece by piece into your life instead of trying to go from 0 to 60 in less than a second.
Right. Right. And in the beginning, and that's what people don't understand, is because they're like, well, how long once you decided plant-based, how long did it take you to go plant-based? And it's not really a fair question because they don't realize it. I don't mean that to be mean to anyone. I'm just saying that what they don't realize is when I decided to go plant-based, I had already been wallowing around in massive change for a year and a half or more, right? So I had already been changing big things in my life, changing physical movement, changing my diet. Even though I know now what I was doing was wrong, I was doing something. I wasn't researching it and just thinking about it in the abstract. I was doing, I was reading, I was learning, I was implementing, I was gauging results, I was changing as necessary, reading, learning, gauging results, changing as necessary. And I've never stopped doing that. I'm doing that today. I'm still reading, learning, implementing, changing according to results. That's how I live my life. And I think if we can get that rhythm, you forget about all of the other stuff because it's really fun. It really is. It's really fun when you start and you're like, oh, I am in control of all of this. I'm in control of it. And once you get it, man, the sky's the limit. But when you sit back and you try, well, tell me what you did and let me see. Tell me how you did it. Oh, I don't know if I can do that. You don't own it. You're not owning the process. As long as you're asking me how to do it, you're not owning the process. Get
It's
in
like, here,
there,
try
right?
something, try
Get in your
anything.
workshop and start hammering away. Throw away the things that aren't working. Keep the things that are working. I'm telling you that you're going to discover more than likely, if you try the right things, that plants and running is a path to a natural, normal, physical human specimen. That's been my discovery. That makes sense to me as a uh, logical human. I'm not an anthropologist or anything like that, but it makes sense to me that natural human food is plants and natural human movement is bipedal locomotion. And when we combine the two, you get a natural human form.
Hmm.
And natural human form is not overweight, it is not diseased, it is not sick and tired and stressed. And that's in a nutshell where I am today. But it wasn't because I said, Hey, it wasn't because I messaged somebody on Facebook and said, "Hey, what did you do? Oh, you did that? Okay, I'm going to do that," and then copied them and then did that. No, I did copy several people, but it was an amalgam of taking other people's experiences, identifying what worked in my life for them, I mean from them, from their methods, um, and
Going from there. What do you have to say to the people that say, you know, health foods taste like crap, or how can you just eat vegetables? Isn't that boring?
well,
I
sure,
mean, especially coming from you because you're the
no,
deep
sure.
fried steak, mayo, beer drinking
Hmm.
guy. I mean, I would think that palate wise, beef jerky eating that was a new one. I think palate wise that would be a huge change. What do you say to people?
You have to do it on purpose. It's not going to just accidentally start tasting better than steak. So, you know, kale, which I had kale and lentils for breakfast this morning. So, people think that that is insane. They would never imagine themselves eating something savory for breakfast, probably in the first place. It's probably going to be something sweet like pancakes or waffles or donuts or something, but much less greens with beans on top, right? So what my point is, you have to do it on purpose, and the way to do that is to understand. And the big tool in my tool chest for helping me on this specific topic is or has been Dr. Doug Lisle and his pleasure trap concept. So the pleasure trap concept lays out to you why a donut tastes better than a piece of broccoli. And in understanding that, you can if you want to, can then make the decision to avoid this unnatural pleasure inducing chunk of macro and micro, well, mostly macronutrients. Okay. So that you can avoid that on purpose. You can own the fact that yes, it is more pleasure inducing because of the calorie density involved in the fat and the uber processed carbohydrates and the sugar. Okay. So you can you can understand why that morsel of food, that mouthful of food, will release more dopamine in my brain and make me a happier person for the moment than the piece of broccoli does. Understanding why that is and why, evolutionarily speaking, we have developed that mechanism inside of our brain to make us attracted to more calorie density to avoid starvation. Okay. So it's a my point is it's an education process, but you have to go and seek that, do that, and learn that on purpose. You're not going to just all of a sudden, oh, I heard Josh say something about Dr. Doug Lisle and this pleasure trap thing, and that's why donuts taste better than broccoli. But man, I just can't give up my donuts. No, that's not it. What I mean is you have to dive into it. Look into it yourself. Watch the TED Talks. Try to understand the concept, understand the entire talk of what he means by the motivational triad and by what the concept of a pleasure trap is in the first place, and then avoid the trap on purpose. Yes.
You
And
mean
then
like
what
kind of like drinking where you just have to like just not go there?
Yes, we never would take this argument from an alcoholic. We would never say from an alcoholic, take the argument that, yeah, but man, whiskey just makes me feel so good. I just enjoy it so much. I just can't give it up. We don't let alcoholics get away with that argument, or we don't let junkies get away with, yeah, but oh my goodness. I mean, heroin just feels so good. It just feels so good. Or the opposite of that. We don't ever talk to an alcoholic or a heroin addict and go, yeah, but you don't just miss a good glass of whiskey from time to time. Yeah, you don't really just miss sinking a needle in your vein and getting some heroin into your bloodstream. You don't just miss that. But we don't mind doing that to a person with a food addiction at all. Not at all. That is going to be the first thing that we're going to ask. A person like me, who I am okay and I am comfortable with calling myself a food addict, I know that just like, and I take this cue from Rich Roll, I will always be a food addict, and I am a constant, perpetual recovering food addict. You don't get to not be something. You don't get to be big as I was by not being something as extreme as an addict. Now, but we wouldn't, like I was saying, but the first thing I get is just that what you would, and I get that all the time. Yeah, but a big, juicy, sizzling steak from Ruth's Chris, you don't miss a piece of Ruth's Chris steak with some cream spinach and glass of wine. Well, of course I remember what that tastes like and the pleasure induced from that thing. All right? Of course I do. But why would I do that when I know the results of the other way? And the other thing that happens when you avoid those unnatural, calorie dense, pleasure inducing things, it's not human food. It's not. And they're designed, they are so rare in our existence, evolutionarily speaking, that our brain has developed a mechanism that when we do come across these very rare calorie dense foods, our brains say, get as much of that as you can. And to make you do so, we're going to release a bunch of dopamine and make you as happy as possible while you're eating it. So you get the message. Hey, when you come across this very rare morsel of food, eat as much of it as you can so we don't starve to death. But what that mechanism fails to realize is we can get all of that food we want. And so it is hard, it is difficult to make that shift on purpose from the uber pleasure inducing foods over to the less stimulating, more natural world of human food, real human food, which is greens and beans and grains and fruit in my estimation is what I've learned and what I've implemented in my life, right? So I'm not making the argument that my way of eating tastes better than a big juicy Whopper from Burger King. That's not the point at all. I totally concede the fact that one tastes better than the other, and but that's the whole point. Um,
But
you're
I
you're
don't know that
stuck.
I necessarily agree that one tastes better than the other.
Well, the people that are asking that question to me, one definitely tastes better than the other. Not to me anymore, because there's something called sensory adaptation that is also part of Dr. Doug Lyle's concept of the pleasure trap, the way to get out of the pleasure trap, and why I'm so 100% in what I eat and how I eat is to give those old foods so they don't have any, they're not in my food lexicon anymore. You understand? So they've left my sensory memory. And so now when I'm hungry, I crave a big bowl of kale and broccoli with some beans, or I crave some oats with bananas and cherries or something in it, or I crave a sweet potato just simply done with maybe a little salt on it. Um, I crave those types of foods. I don't crave, cheese and meat and butter and those things anymore. But I do understand how and why they are and can be so much more pleasure inducing than a bowl of kale with some nutritional yeast and tomatoes and sliced onions on top. I understand that. I think I would lose credibility if I didn't concede the fact that to the person asking me the question, that yes, the Whopper tastes better than my kale salad that I had for lunch today. But my point is, just like sitting on the sofa in the air condition feels a whole lot better than running out in 85-degree heat with 90% humidity. One feels better than the other. I agree. Totally. Just like it feels better to not get out of bed and go to work than it is to get up and go to work. Or it feels better to whatever you want to. Feels better to not stop at red lights because I just don't want to stop. I don't have time. Right? But there's certain things that you must do. And eating like a real human is one of those things if you want to achieve what it is you think I've achieved.
Well, and I need to say we only have about 3 minutes left.
Yes, ma'am.
But one of the things, I mean, I do alternative health counseling, and one of the things that I see is that so many people, the foods that we eat, I mean, even if they're organic, doesn't necessarily mean that if you're eating an organic bar of some kind, that it's necessarily healthy.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, I know. Because now the buzzword is plant-based or gluten-free or vegan or organic. And that doesn't mean anything. Because no one has, as long as you haven't addressed your relationship with food and your relationship with a hot dog and the giggly happiness that eating hot dogs around a barbecue pit brings you, then it doesn't matter if you're eating vegan hot dogs on gluten-free buns or if you're having a ballpark frank.
See, I don't even get that, they sell vegan hot dogs, or this
Right.
one place here
That's
has
that's
vegan
a whole nother show. Yeah.
vegan turkey. I'm like,
Yes,
I'd rather
ma'am.
eat the freaking turkey than eat some processed something sort of hot dog thing that even tastes worse than a hot dog.
And what I've discovered is even inside of, as you try to more specifically describe it by saying whole food plant-based, even inside of that, you can abuse food. And so that's my point about backing out from all of it and saying, hey, we need to stop thinking of food as a lover and a best friend and more as a business partner. And that's the issue, regardless of whatever moniker you put on the way you eat is. Because even if you're a whole food plant-based person, you can have Ezekiel bread, whole grain Ezekiel bread with nut butter smeared on it, and you can find some dates and put dates on the top, and then you essentially have what tastes like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And you can eat that 4 times a day and have a big smoothie with nut butter and fruit and banana and all of these things in it. And you can put on weight. You can put on weight. You cannot lose weight for sure. But I'm eating whole food plant-based. No, because you're still too giggle happy over food pleasure. Regardless of what type of food it is, you still want the Mexican Fiesta Bowl with all kinds of avocado and some wraps on it, instead of using food for happiness, for nourishment. And it doesn't matter what realm of dietary practice you're in, if you don't address your relationship with food, you're going to struggle. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter. Yes, you'll be a healthier person eschewing all animal products, but you doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose weight.
And on that note,
that over and over. Yes, ma'am.
On that note, we're going to call it a wrap because our time is up. The
Yes,
music's
ma'am.
coming up.
Perfect.
And Josh, thank you so much for coming on, and I know that I will be talking to you again soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I look forward to it. I had a good time.
I look forward to it too, and everybody check out his blog, and he does like YouTube videos, which I don't mean to laugh, but sometimes they're really funny. Anyway, so bye, Josh. I gotta go.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
All
Later.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That's Josh LaJuanie. His webpage is joshlajani.com. And next week, it's Egypt all night long. In the first hour, we're speaking with John Ward and Maria Nielsen. And in the second hour, we have Carmen Boldaire. Egypt, Egypt, Egypt. Till next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser to www